There is a story you have been told since the moment you were born. It was not told with words, but with images. It was whispered in the checkout aisle, reflected in the screens you hold in your hands, and sculpted onto the faces of the women you were taught to admire. It is the story of beauty, and it has a protagonist. A woman who is flawless, ageless, and serene. Her value is written on her skin, in the curve of her body, in the gloss of her hair, and you, like all of us, have been cast in a supporting role. Your task is to aspire to her, to strive for her, to measure yourself against her impossible shadow. You feel this pressure as a quiet, persistent hum beneath the surface of your daily life. It is the exhaustion of the morning routine, the calculus of calories, the sting of a bad photo, the quiet dread of aging. This feeling is not a personal failing. It is not vanity. It is not insecurity. It is the echo of a cage being built around you, bar by invisible bar. It is a psychological architecture so vast, you might mistake it for the world itself. But what if this architecture could be revealed? What if the story of beauty was not a timeless truth, but a modern invention with a hidden purpose? In 1991, a voice rose to name this invisible prison. The voice belonged to the writer Naomi Wolf, and she gave the cage a name: the beauty myth. Wolf's groundbreaking work was not just a critique of lipstick and diet culture. It was a political. It argued that just as women began to gain unprecedented legal and economic power, a new, more subtle form of social control took hold. This control, she argued, was the myth of beauty, a myth that is prescriptive, not descriptive. It is not about celebrating the diversity of female beauty. It is about prescribing a single, unattainable standard. Wolf presents us with a devastating framework. The beauty myth, she writes, is not about women at all. It is about men's institutions and institutional power. It is a system of beliefs and ideals that uses judgments about a woman's appearance to maintain a social hierarchy, one that had been threatened by the second wave of feminism. If the feminine mystique of the 1950s kept women in the home, the beauty myth keeps women in a state of self-hatred, obsessive comparison, and financial expenditure. No matter how much external power they achieve, the core of the myth is that beauty is a quality that is objective and universal, that there is one ideal standard, and every woman can and should strive to achieve it. This is the foundational lie. Wolf deconstructs this by showing how the ideal of beauty shifts dramatically across cultures and throughout history, always in a way that serves the dominant power structure. The slender, boyish flapper of the 1920s gave way to the voluptuous pinup of the 1950s, which then morphed into the skeletal waif of the 1990s and the surgically enhanced Instagram face of today. These are not organic shifts in taste. They are manufactured ideals, disseminated through media and advertising, designed to create new markets and new anxieties. Let us deconstruct how this myth operates in your world, not as an abstract theory, but as a lived reality. We begin with the workplace. As women entered professional spaces in greater numbers, the myth created a new, unspoken job requirement: professional beauty. Studies consistently show that women deemed attractive by conventional standards are more likely to be hired, are perceived as more competent, and receive higher salaries. This has been called the beauty premium, but it's a treacherous game. A woman must be beautiful, but not too beautiful, lest she'll be seen as unprofessional or distracting. She must appear youthful, but not too young, lest she'll be perceived as inexperienced. She must invest significant time and money on hair, makeup, wardrobe, cosmetic procedures just to meet the baseline expectation. This is a tax on her time and resources that her male colleagues rarely have to pay. Wolf calls this the professional beauty qualification, or PBQ. It's an invisible line item on every woman's job description. The myth tells you this is about looking professional. The reality is that it's about forcing you to divert your energy, your money, and your focus away from acquiring more direct power, and toward the endless, unwinnable project of your own appearance. Now, let us turn to the realm of relationships and the beauty myth creates a devastating equation. Your worth as a person is directly tied to your value in the beauty market. It teaches you to see yourself through the eyes of an imagined observer, a constant judge. You are not simply living. You are performing your appearance for this invisible audience. This turns your own body into an object of scrutiny, a collection of flaws to be fixed. Your thighs, your stomach, your wrinkles, your skin, they become your enemies. The myth promotes a culture of comparison, which social media has amplified to an unbearable degree. You are not just comparing yourself to the airbrushed models in magazines anymore. You are comparing your unedited morning face to the curated, filtered, and angled perfection of influencers, friends, and strangers, 24 hours a day. This creates what Wolf termed a psychological Iron Maiden, an internal instrument of torture, lined with the spikes of self-criticism and comparison. Every time you fall short of the ideal, the spikes press in. The Iron Maiden whispers that if you were just thinner, prettier, younger, you would be happier. You would be more loved. You would be worthy. This is the myth's cruelest trick. It convinces you that the source of your suffering is your own physical imperfection rather than the myth itself. It isolates you in your perceived failure, making you believe your struggle is a personal one, when in fact, it is a collective political experience. Consider the language of the myth. We speak of anti-aging creams as if aging were a disease to be fought, not a natural process of life. We talk about problem areas on our bodies as if a part of our own flesh were a geopolitical crisis to be managed. We call food good or bad, imbuing sustenance with a moral quality that becomes transferred onto ourselves. Eating a bad food doesn't just have caloric consequences. It makes you a bad person. This is the colonization of the self. The myth takes over your internal monologue, replacing the voice of self-acceptance with the voice of a relentless critic. The financial engine of the myth is staggering. The global beauty industry is worth over $500 billion. The diet industry, its close cousin, is worth hundreds of billions more. These industries do not sell beauty. They sell anxiety. Their business model depends on you believing that you are fundamentally and perpetually flawed. A product is not successful if it solves your problem forever. It is successful if it makes you dependent on it. And if it creates 10 new problems you didn't know you had. The serum for your fine lines makes you notice the texture of your pores. The foundation that covers your blemishes makes you obsess over the shape of your nose. It is a system designed for failure. The ideal it sells is, by definition, unattainable. It is a composite image of different features from different women, surgically altered, airbrushed, and lit to perfection. It does not exist in reality. This guarantees that you will always be a customer. You are not buying a product. You are paying tribute to a myth that holds your self-worth hostage. The myth also dictates our relationship with food and hunger. Wolf argues that dieting and obsession with thinness are not about health. They are about obedience and self. In an era where women have more freedom, controlling a woman's appetite becomes a potent metaphor for controlling her other appetites for power, for sex, for knowledge, for life itself. A woman who is perpetually hungry is a woman who is weakened, distracted, and docile. Her mind is occupied with a constant, draining calculus of what she can and cannot eat. This drains her of the mental and emotional energy she could be using to write a book, start a company, run for office, or simply live with a sense of peace and presence in her own body. Hunger becomes a virtue. Restraint becomes a sign of moral superiority. We praise women for their discipline when they shrink themselves. What we are really praising is their conformity to a system that demands their diminishment. Finally, the myth attacks the natural process of aging. The obsession with youthfulness is not about celebrating the vitality of the young. It is about punishing the wisdom of the old. An older woman is a woman who has accumulated experience, knowledge, and power. She is a woman who is more likely to have seen through the games of the world, to have found her own voice. In a patriarchal structure, this woman is a threat. The beauty myth neutralizes this threat by rendering her invisible, by telling her that her value expired with her youth. The wrinkles on her face, which should be seen as a map of her life and her wisdom, are branded as signs of failure and decay. This creates a tragic divide between generations of women. Young women are taught to fear their future selves, and older women are taught to resent their past selves. It prevents the transmission of wisdom and solidarity, replacing it with the shared terror of the one thing that is inevitable for all of us: time. The deconstruction is unsettling, isn't it? To see the bars of the cage, to feel the cold metal of the Iron Maiden. It can feel overwhelming to realize how deeply this myth is woven into the fabric of our culture and our own minds. But here, in this recognition, lies the beginning of your freedom. The myth only has power when it operates in the dark, when it is mistaken for truth. The moment you see it for what it is, a system equate lies, the moment its power over you begins to shatter. This is the great liberating truth that Naomi Wolf offers us. Beauty is not a quality you possess. It is a currency system you have been forced to trade in. Let that sink in. Your beauty is not a measure of your intrinsic worth. It is not a reflection of your soul or your character. It is a form of currency, like money or status, that has been historically manufactured and manipulated to keep women in a specific social and economic place. And like any currency system, its value is determined not by some objective truth, but by the institutions that control its circulation. In this case, media, advertising, and corporate power. You have been taught your whole life that you are a participant in a grand contest of beauty. The liberating truth is that you are not a participant. You are the resource being traded. Your self-doubt is the engine of the economy. Your anxiety is the product being sold. Your compliance is the foundation of the power structure. To see this is to be handed the key to your own cage. Because once you understand that it is a system, you can choose to stop playing. You can begin the radical, world-changing act of withdrawing your consent. This is not about abandoning aesthetics or pleasure. It is not a call to stop enjoying makeup or fashion or art. Beauty, in its true sense, is a vital part of the human experience. But the beauty myth is not about real beauty. It is about uniformity. The authentic self, the liberated self, finds beauty in what is individual, unique, and real. The archetype of the authentic self is not the flawless goddess on the pedestal. It is the woman who inhabits her own body with authority. She is the woman whose face shows the lines of her laughter and her grief. She is the woman who eats when she is hungry and rests when she is tired. She is the woman whose value is not located on the surface of her skin, but in the depths of her mind, the strength of her character, and the truth of her voice. She is the artist, the thinker, the leader, the mother, the friend. She is defined by what she does, what she creates, and what she loves, not by how she is seen. Reclaiming this self is not a single act, but a continuous process. It is a rebellion waged, not with weapons, but with awareness. So, how do we begin this integration? How do we live this truth in a world that is still saturated with the myth? It begins with a conscious dissent. It begins by changing the way you speak, both to yourself and to others. When you look in the mirror, you can choose to see a body, not an object. You can thank it for its strength, for carrying you through this life, instead of listing its flaws. You can stop using the language of the myth. You can banish the words good and bad. When speaking of food, you can refuse to speak of you can call it what it is. Living, you can curate your digital world with fierce intention. Unfollow the accounts that trigger the Iron Maiden. Follow artists, thinkers, and creators of all ages, shapes, and sizes. Fill your screen with reality, not with fiction. You can change the nature of your compliments. Instead of telling a friend you look so thin, tell her you seem so happy, or your energy is so vibrant, or I was so impressed by what you said in that meeting. Compliment women on their qualities, not their quality. Praise their being, not their appearance. Each time you do this, you weaken the myth's hold on both of you. This is an act of solidarity. When you free yourself, you create a space for other women to free themselves. You must also learn to identify the myth's propaganda. When you see an advertisement for a cellulite cream, see it for what it is, an attempt to profit from manufactured insecurity. Name it. This is the beauty myth. When you read a magazine article about a celebrity's post-baby body, see it for what it is, a cruel and unnecessary pressure placed on women during a vulnerable time. Name it. This is the beauty myth. This act of naming is an act of intellectual. It creates a critical distance between you and the message, preventing it from seeping into your subconscious. The challenge is not to become beautiful by the myth's standards. The challenge is to become so rooted in your own worth that the myth's standards become it is to find a source of validation that is internal, not external. To cultivate a sense of self that is not for sale, that cannot be devalued by a photograph, a number on a scale, or the passing of time. This is not easy. It is a lifelong practice of rebellion. There will be days when the myth feels powerful, when the Iron Maiden's whispers are loud. On those days, do not meet the voice with self-criticism. Meet it with awareness. Recognize it for what it is, an echo from the cage you are leaving behind. You are not a decorator. You are not a project to be performed. You are the architect of your own life. The beauty that matters is the one you create, not the one you are told to pursue. It is the beauty of your ideas, the beauty of your resilience, the beauty of your compassion. The work is to dismantle the cage, bar by bar, and to step out into the full, unedited, and magnificent reality of your own being. To reclaim the time, the money, and the mental energy you have been taught to sacrifice at the altar of the myth, and to invest it in yourself, your community, and your world. The most beautiful woman is not the one who conforms to an ideal. She is the one who has forgotten she is being watched. She is the one who is free,